It's not TV, it's HBO.
It's not TV, it's HBO.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. Mwah.
Meet Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. Jason Jaffe, you my friend. Jason Jaffe, you too. You famous.
You famous?
You famous.
No, you famous.
You famous.
No, you famous.
You famous.
Yes, we famous.
Oh, very good, very good. Oh, I love you. I love you. Goodbye, goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Jason Jaffe, my friend. Jason Jaffe, my friend.
Goodbye.
I love you, Jason Jaffe. Wow. I love you, Jason Jaffe. Wow. Very good. Thank you.
This is my best kind of show notes. We didn't touch one of them, not even one of them. I'm not sure which one is Paul Rudd and which one is Lane Green.
Final card here is the ultimate outcome.
Today is take your dog to work day.
Oh, like Scooby-Doo.
Without further ado, his debut.
Sweet Caroline.
Everybody say hello to Sammy. Is it not good?
I'm just pausing so that you just are at the front of your screen.
I'm so enormously flattered.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
I'm gonna have to take a picture of this.
No, this is agape. This is love.
I really enjoyed this. You did do your homework. You asked great questions.
I'm flattered. Thank you. You just made my day.
Look at you. You are insane.
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane.
did I do that?
You're insane.
I might be insane, but I am insanely excited because today I have, forget about not famous. I have the formerly famous and the famous again, the one, the only, Mr. Simon Bull. In fact, I got to tell you a little, confession time. I actually thought his name was Simon Bullet for the longest time because I just read his name as Simon Bull Art. And then suddenly when Simon Bull responded to me, I was like, I've got the wrong Simon. I want Simon Bullet. With my South African accent, it sounds like B-U-L-L-E-T. But no, I have Simon Bull. I am a huge, huge fan of the work, of his art, of his creativity. We're going to have a lot of fun today. But first, you know, I feel the need to tell you that if you like what you see, please subscribe to me. Bite me, bit.ly/subscribe to the show on YouTube. 450 interviews, but without question, my best interview yet is the one that is about to unfold in front of your very eyes. bit.ly/subscribe to the show. Now, every morning, because I don't create enough content, that's why I get so giddy with someone like Simon, who I don't think, has he missed a day on Instagram? I'm not sure. We're going to ask him. But who works harder, Simon or myself? Every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I also do a virtual coffee in Discord. If you want to join us, discord.gg/Alpha Collective, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're in LA, it's 5 to 6 a.m. Surely you're up at that time. I mean, the early bird gets the virtual coffee. We have a lot of fun. We manifest. We have Thought Leadership Tuesday, Wellness Wednesday. We do live book reads on Thursday. Who knows? Maybe Simon will even join us one day. Today we discussed the Bud Light Dylan Mulvaney controversy, and with all the different interesting extensions that have come out of it, including the CEO's apology, the rolling out of the Clydesdales. You know, it's kind of crazy to me how we live in a world in 2023, and yet we still can't quite figure out how to communicate directly, clearly, honestly, transparently with our audience. We also haven't figured out that everything that happens today happens in the public domain, in the court of public opinion. I want to show you this that broke today. This is Andy Owen, the CEO of Miller Knox, which is Miller Knoll, which is really the parent company of Herman Miller chairs. I think I might be actually sitting in one right now. But God bless Andy, who decided to berate her employees on Zoom for moaning about the fact that they were not taking home a bonus, when in actual fact she was taking home a $6 million bonus. Let's watch Andy Owen in action. Andy, congratulations. You are the first guest on Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous Today, and therefore you are famous.
Questions came through about how can we stay motivated if we're not going to get a bonus? What can we do? What can we do? Some of them were nice and some of them were not so nice. So I'm going to address this head on. The most important thing we can do right now is focus on the things that we can control. None of us could have predicted COVID. None of us could have predicted supply chain. None of us could have predicted bank failures. But what we can do is stay in front of our customers, provide the best customer service we can, get our orders out our door, treat each other well, be kind, be respectful, focus on the future because it will be bright. It's not good to be in a situation we're in today, but we're not going to be here forever. It is going to get better. So lead by example, treat people well, talk to them, be kind, and get after it. Don't ask about what are we going to do if we don't get a bonus. Get the damn $26 million. Spend your time and your effort thinking about the $26 million we need and not thinking about what you're going to do if we don't get a bonus. All right? Can I get some commitment for that? I would appreciate that. I had an old boss who said to me one time, you can visit Pity City, but you can't live there. So people, leave Pity City. Let's get it done. Thank you. Have a great day.
I'm just going to let that sit out there. She was doing so well, by the way. She was doing so well until, I don't know if something wore off. Maybe there was some, alleged medication. But the minute that it wore off, she just, I don't know, became a different person and started berating people and telling them to go down, not Paradise City, but to Pity City. Anyway, enough about that. Let's focus on something that is much more constructive, more positive. HPO, hope, positivity, and optimism. Start off by sharing the bonus with one another. It is time for our seated soliloquy. And as always, the seated soliloquy has something to do with my guest. I decided to call this one How I Made This. You know, when we think about life, and we'll talk about this a lot today, about success is a journey, not a destination. The thing about destinations, the thing about goals is two things really happen. One is goalposts often get moved. And so you think you're going to reach the future. You think you're going to reach tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. But the other thing is when we hit a goal, when we set the bar high and we are able to exceed the bar, then the bar gets raised. And so what was once possible is now something that we take for granted, or something that doesn't excite us, something that doesn't even register as success. And so instead of always focusing on the prize, on the status, on the ego, on success, on financial compensation, on, quite frankly, being famous, what about the journey? What about rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty? And there is no dirtier person than my guest today, Simon Bull. And I mean that as the ultimate compliment, because when you look around at his beautiful workshop, at his canvas, the walls, the floor, the tables, the chairs, his clothes, he is a walking, living, breathing canvas. There is so much dirtiness, but beautiful dirtiness. The dirt that associates or is associated with this idea of practical, rolling up your sleeves, just immersing yourself. So let's focus on the journey as opposed to the destination. Let's focus on the art, the act of making, as opposed to the finished product. The finished product, it's a medal, it's a badge, it hangs up, it's displayed, but the actual beauty of how it was made is so much more beautiful. And that's why I'm so excited to bring on my guest. Now, if you are watching right now and you want to comment, you are actually part of the show. So if you're a fan of Simon's and you want to comment in the comment section, we'll try and bring on as many, maybe if not all of your comments as well. So just want to incentivize you to be a part of the show. Now, one of the things I've been doing of late, which is a little bit fun, is I've been going to, and it's so interesting. I had David Drebin yesterday, who's a photographer, who's an artist as well, talking about AI, talking about automation, talking about actually in sometimes the mechanical aspect of creativity. But I've been going to ChatGPT and using ChatGPT to introduce my guest. And so I decided to do that as well with respect to Simon. Ladies and gentlemen, this, of course, is created by AI. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the extraordinarily talented Simon Bull, an artist who weaves the vibrant threads of life and creativity into every mesmerizing masterpiece. Once a renowned name, Simon's artistic brilliance has been rekindled on Instagram, showcasing his dynamic use of color and powerful themes that celebrate the human spirit. As a resilient cancer survivor, Simon is an inspiring testament to the indomitable will to live and create amidst adversity. His art speaks not only to our eyes, but to our hearts, reminding us to triumph over life's challenges. So let's say it together: fuck cancer. And now let's welcome the incredible Simon Bull. Simon, welcome to the show. Can you believe a bot came up with that?
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I might have helped a little bit with the bot, but especially the fuck cancer part. You know, my mom passed away, unfortunately, from cancer after a 7-year battle. And I've never actually said those two words on my show, but I'm very happy to do it. And I'm very happy you're still with us.
Well, you can say it because technically you didn't say it. It was the bot that said it, right?
Well, exactly. I may have prompted the bot as well. But yeah, welcome to the show. And it's great to be a fan of someone who then comes on the show. And, you know, I was thinking we'll talk about a whole bunch of things, but it must be kind of surreal sometimes when you flip the roles, because you're doing all the stuff, you're putting it out, you see the likes, you see the comments as well. You never see the people, you never see the humans oftentimes that are watching you, that are voyeuristically peering in on your life, on your process as well. And now you get to meet one face to face.
No, it's I actually went live the other day. I don't often go live on Instagram, but it was very interesting because immediately within a few seconds I was talking to people from India, Saudi Arabia, Chile, you know, Brazil, you know, all over the world, obviously America, England. And the power of these platforms now, if you have a following, to be able to just speak to transcend regular culture and speak direct to people in the chat thread is incredible, really.
I mean, it is amazing. I actually tell a story of I was in Moscow, of all places, presenting to Coca-Cola. And this was, you know, during the days of, I want to say maybe 2008, 2007. I just published my second book, and Twitter was maybe about a year or two old. And I remember going in and I said, I tweeted, I said, call this number now. And it was my Skype in number. And the next thing, the Skype just started essentially ringing off the hook. And I would be like, caller, like, where are you calling from? Where are you calling from? And we had South Africa, and we had New Zealand, and we had England, and we had the US. And I just remember the look on the executives' faces in that room. They just couldn't understand and grasp the immediacy of it and the global aspect of that responsiveness. It's a memory that I'll never forget.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
And now you have that with your cult following. I don't know if it's a cult following, but let's just call it that as well. Now, Simon, we'll get into your story because it's an amazing story. And but we have a little bit of fun sometimes with our guests, and we have a little segment called Fun Facts because they're I don't know, fun facts. And one of them, I mean, I guess it relates to the fact that you've been painting for a living since 1976, which, for those of you that are counting backwards, was before Y2K. I think I was around in 1976 as well, as these white whiskers will attend to. But the thing that caught my eye is this idea that you said, I'm formerly famous, but recently made a comeback. So I had to find a formerly famous type of image for you. And I think Gary Busey probably embodies that. I guess you're running after him in this particular case. But tell us your story about being formerly famous, first of all, before the comeback. And then I'll kind of jump in with a question or two.
Well, I started my art career, if you like. Well, I started making a living out of art when I was a teenager in high school. And I jokingly say that the teachers started offering me cash in exchange for art, and I've been trying to keep up with demand ever since. But in order to be scalable, my business in the, I should say, from 1980, when I actually founded my art studio in England, from 1980 to 1993, was based on rather traditional little etchings that we used to print out. So it was a publishing distribution business. So it was pretty successful, and we penetrated the UK market fairly thoroughly. I would sell my etchings, at affordable prices to the galleries. The galleries would sell them on. But then in the 90s, in the mid 90s, my style developed, and I moved away from that kind of more traditional look to a more colorful, sort of whimsical kind of a look. And I developed a unique form of printmaking, which I called at the time mixed media etching, which was, I developed at a time when the art market and the economy was rather suppressed. I sort of invented a system of doing print on demand before print on demand was technologically available. So it was rather successful in the UK between 1995 and the year 2000. And I actually went on to win an award from the Fine Art Trade Guild in the UK for the top selling artist of original prints in the UK. So, we had big distribution, and we'd bring out 3 collections a year, and we started distributing we started arrangements with distributors in different countries around the world, because back in those days, the art business was really like a print business. You would sell prints, whether it was etchings, lithographs, or just mass-produced prints. But then when technology changed around about the turn of the century, the year 2000, and giclée printing became more viable, that sort of all that print business kind of went away, because previously you could only be in the print business if you had either a publisher who would print it for you, or you had a big investment that you made in infrastructure and distribution. So it precluded most artists from being in that world. But then when print on demand came along, giclée came along, anybody could basically buy a giclée machine for $5,000 and set it up in their kitchen and start printing on demand prints. And so it resulted in the decimation of the art business as we knew it in those days. And the whole thing had to reset. And so my business went from supplying 600 galleries in the UK, 300 galleries in the US. It went to, basically me selling a few prints online and selling my originals eventually through my own galleries, which then became the kind of new normal and actually very successful. And then I started putting videos out on Instagram a year ago, which was sort of more art process videos, and it kind of went.
I want to pause you for a second, because and by the way, here is someone speaking of which, Vincenzo Corleone. It sounds like someone that I need to respect with a last name of Corleone, but from Chile. Saludos to you. So some of your fans are watching us right now. Simon, there are two things that jump out to me in your story. This idea of being, this even almost tongue-in-cheek of formerly famous. Really what happened was technology came along, or solutions came along, that essentially rendered your point of difference, your unique selling proposition, not as unique anymore, not as differentiated, quite frankly, almost commoditized in a sense. And in many respects, we're witnessing that now with automation, with AI, with technology. I guess you came to two forks in the road, as Yogi Berra would say. If you come to a fork in the road, take it. One is dealing with the idea of not being as famous anymore and almost reinventing yourself. And the second is exactly that. This idea of figuring out new approaches, new techniques, evolving. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about from a psychological standpoint, how did it feel to, see your livelihood almost being taken away from you? And then what motivated you to actually keep moving and almost reinvent yourself?
Well, I've been in the art business, as I said, 45 years or so. And so you go through many recessions and many booms and bust cycles. But it's wrong to think of those things as your adversary. They actually help you. I mean, when I look back at, say, the most difficult times economically, say when a recession set in, typically when a recession comes along, it kills off redundant ways of doing business, kills off redundant markets, redundant technologies, and at the very bottom of the graph, before you reach an inflection point, that's actually your most creative moment, because you have an opportunity of dying at that point or doing something interesting, which suddenly becomes the next big thing. And so that's something that I've kind of been rather fortunate in having mastered somewhat over the years. But because I love what I do, it's always been a question of finding ways of bringing, your story to market and putting it. Because when I first started as a kid, I started my business with a really simple business plan, and that was create the best work that I could and put it in front of as many people as I could. And I've always followed that same mantra. I've never deviated from it. So the work is always, I've been fortunate, the work has always been strong and interesting, and something that I've enjoyed and keeps on growing. The question has always been, how do you put it in front of as many people as possible? Because marketing, that's all that marketing is. And from marketing, then you eventually get sales. And from sales, you put the money back into new product development and new creative ideas and new distribution and blah, blah, blah. So et cetera, et cetera.
So it turns out actually that you're a great marketer, because that's the $1 million or the $1 billion question. In fact, it is what I even struggle with. I need to Simon Bull myself. I need to bullify myself in terms of finding that inflection point. I love the simplicity and the elegance of this idea. Just focus on creating the best work and then put it in front of as many people as possible. I think so often we complicate and overcomplicate the issue and the challenge and the journey, as opposed to just do great work and then try and find the audience. So let's talk a little bit about what you did. By the way, Shannon is here from Vancouver Island in Canada, and says, being broken is what started my journey over a year ago, echoing the point that you made. So now we can segue, Simon, in terms of this new direction in your life. Talk a little bit about it, the role that Instagram played, and also we'll get into the technique. We obviously we're very fortunate enough to have a bunch of videos from you, and so we can cue those up whenever you like. So continue with your amazing story, please.
Well, for many years in between, from the days when I ran a print business to the days when I opened my own galleries, I was working on cruise ships. And while I wasn't working on cruise ships, I was actually selling my work to a gallery called Part West Gallery that sold the work on cruise ships. And through doing a lot of shows with them, and I would do about 18 shows a year, both in hotels around the country and on cruise ships, I developed, well, I was kind of fed up with the idea that a lot of artists were increasingly not painting their own paintings. They were having them mass produced by workers in factories and then sort of signing their name to it. And I wanted people to be sure that every painting that had the signable signature on it was actually my art that I'd done myself. So I started doing performance paintings, and I would do these live performances. And I sort of, over the years, developed a way of doing it that was entertaining and also created interesting art. And so when I left that business and developed my own gallery chain, I was painting one day in the studio, and I thought, well, it would be fun to actually, do some Instagram reels of this. And so it was it was May last year, so it was not even a year ago, that I started putting some of my first art process reels up on Instagram. And, I'd spent 10 years on Instagram, had about 5,000 followers or whatever. And the first weekend I started putting these reels up, we started getting, it was just a weird thing that started happening. We just started getting millions of views, and thousands of followers just started happening. We'd start getting 15,000 new followers a day or whatever, as previously, if I'd have got 3 followers that day, I'd be like, yeah, it's a big day, Not that I was even pursuing followers. I just thought, well, I'm going to put the content up there. And it seemed to strike a chord. And in the last 11 months, we've had over 1 billion views,
Well, hang on a second. I need to whip out the old air horn. 1 billion views. It sounds very, very Austin Powers or Dr. Evil. And 1 billion views. We've got a video. Let's show this video, because I want to know whether it's friends, family, social. I want to hire that social media manager. Let's watch one of those videos. Is that the social media team in the background?
So that video was one of the very first ones that I posted. I posted on the 2nd of May, 2nd of June last year, and it was of my daughter and 2 of her friends who both work in tech, and they were down for the weekend, and we posted that, and they kept telling me, "Hey, what's happening to your Instagram? It's blowing up." So that reel went on to get 1.5 million views within a month. But it was just one of those crazy things, because, I was like this old dude, and this was like the younger generation saying, "Hey, how come you got 1 million views on your Instagram? It's crazy." It was like, took us all by surprise,
Well, apparently you outdid that 1 million. Here's another video, and then you can tell people how many views this one has acquired.
Sometimes your son gonna be looking you in the eye and say, "Dad, how do I get through this?" And then what are you gonna tell him when you quit before? What are you gonna tell him when you took shortcuts?
Yeah, that was the first one that went like hyper viral. We got 30 million views on that one.
Hang on, air horn again. 30 million views. I might give up a body part for 30 million views. I'm not going to say what part. I'm just saying a bodily part. Tell us about that experience.
Well, it was interesting because we started getting, my daughter would call me and say, Dad, have you seen what people are writing? People are sending negative comments, And I was like, what? And I'd look on and people were saying, this isn't art, like this is garbage, anybody could do this. I can't believe you're doing this and stuff like that. And it was actually pretty interesting to witness. And it kind of struck a chord because the video itself I posted was of a painting. Like it was me trying a technique that I'd seen somebody else try, and it was done really badly. It was like a fail. So that video I called in the comment in the caption, I called it epic fail. So it was supposed to be like a video of me trying something new that didn't work out. And of course, Instagram being what it was, everybody thinks, oh, this guy thinks he's a super great artist and he thinks this is amazing art. Well, it's not art. You know what I mean? Stop what you're doing right now. And so it kind of created a lot of, dialogue because there were a lot of haters, and then people would come on and defend, and they'd, fight it, duke it out amongst the comments, and, so on and so forth. So we found that nothing's going to go. For my personal experience, nothing's going to get more than 1 or 2 million views without a lot of haters.
So, haters are going to hate is the old saying. How did you deal with that? You talk about being this old man trying to figure this thing out. And now you see all these comments, you see people hating on you, the keyboard warriors, as they're called, people defending you. How did it feel just in terms of your own self-worth, your confidence? Because you said something very interesting to me when we were doing when we had a little pre-show conversation. You surprisingly lean into the haters and you don't mind them as much as maybe I thought you might.
No, we love the haters. I mean, the thing is that you've got to understand that Instagram, social media generally, but Instagram in particular, is a sort of a knee-jerk community. People see something, they're just, scrolling the feed. They don't have time to assess, they don't do a deep dive into understanding what they're looking at. They said that looks to me like it's stupid. I'm going to tell that person just so he knows that you're stupid. What you're doing is stupid, right? But I found often, if I respond to someone, like somebody wrote to me this morning, they made a comment and they said, well, does anybody really buy this stuff? Right? Which technically a negative comment. And I thought, well, what am I going to say? And I thought, I think I'm just going to answer honestly, sensibly. And I said to him, well, look, I said to them, him or her, I'm not quite sure. I said, well, to be fair, apart from works that have been archived or are in the current inventory, I've sold everything I've produced since 1976. And then he's like, oh, that's amazing. I love your work, So, so the point being that the negative comments are just like a visceral reaction that people make. And we love it. I mean, there are other people out there that I've seen that they get all upset about negative comments, but if you put something cool out there, you're going to have 50% haters and 50% lovers, and that's just going to be reality, and you can't avoid it, and so it's to be welcomed. It's a sign that you're making waves,
It is. It's what I would call a proof of life. And I remember writing a blog post, I don't know, about 10 years ago, and the title of it was actually called Embrace Hate. And the context of it was I had a photograph of Crocs. And I said, these must be the most goddamn butt ugly shoes ever created. I hate them. And the whole point was, when someone says, I hate you, what they mean is, I love you. I just want you to work a little bit harder to earn that love.
Right.
The real enemy is apathy, indifference, people that have no opinion. So I like your idea of 50% lovers, 50% haters.
And that goes into the product as well, in the sense that we don't try to create, the perfect reel. When I was younger, I would try and paint pictures that would be so good that people would say, this guy is a really good artist. Look, he can really paint. But the thing is that the thing was wrong. It was let me just get rid of this. The mindset was wrong, because the point is that nobody cares whether you're a good artist. They just care how the artwork speaks to them at the end of the day. And so my work changed quite a bit in the mid-90s when I stopped trying to impress people. I stopped painting to impress and started painting to bless, so to speak. And now on Instagram, it's not even about the artwork or the finished thing. It's about the process. It's about, I stopped making posts to show, I stopped showcasing my work as something people to admire, and just started honestly sharing the process. So the work, the Instagram reels were not promotional. They were actually just entertainment, performance art pieces in their own right. Often a lot of the paintings that I did for Instagram, the paint would just stream off the canvas, and that'd be the end of that. And people would say, can I buy this, or where is it at? And I'm like, well, it doesn't actually exist anymore. Sorry, it was just it was just for the reel.
I mean, there's so much that I want to say, but specifically this idea of the reels, it's real art, as in REEL art. It's reels as art. The reels became part of the actual finished product. And this is the genius of what you created, whether you intended to or not. But ultimately, when I can afford to buy your art, for the person that doesn't want to buy your art, I'll take it. But you almost want the making
Don't worry,
of it.
we sent you something.
Oh my goodness, just hold on. I'm winner, chicken dinner. Well, guess what? I'm gonna proudly put it behind me. But Simon, the thing that's so amazing is that when you have the finished product, you actually want the making of it. That becomes part. It's an accompaniment, it's an accompaniment, it's a companion. It brings it to life. It is the journey and the destination, and that's what you've created.
That's true. Yeah, it's the journey is definitely the funnest part in a way. I actually posted a piece yesterday that it was about a piece that had gone completely wrong, and I painted over it, and then that didn't work out, so I painted over it again, and it worked out great. So, it's the lots go. On Instagram, you can just show maybe a 12-second, a 30-second clip of something that maybe takes a little bit longer. So,
I've got a few to show you, but I remember being at MoMA, and I was looking at a Jackson Pollock piece, magnificent Jackson Pollock piece, and it just looked like a mess. And in many respects, which is clearly the biggest compliment I can give you, your pieces look a lot like Jackson Pollock. I'm comparing you to Jack. Yes, I just did that. I compared you to Jackson Pollock. And I was looking at it, and I thought to myself, almost in a very immature type of way, it was probably 1994. I could have done that. It looks so chaotic and scatty and all over the show. A child could have done that. But of course, what I've learned in later years is, but a child didn't do that. Jackson Pollock did that. Simon Bull did that. And instead of the perfection, as you say, what a brilliant quote, art not to impress, but art to bless.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that it's easy to copy somebody else, copy a photo. Today, a lot of people think that you're a good artist if you can copy a photo and it looks like a photo, but that's not really art. The purpose of art, really, at the end of the day, is to move somebody else. And if the audience is thinking about how good the artist is because they can do some detailed eyelashes on something, that's not the same as them being stopped in their track and being kind of provoked by the color or the shape or the form, or moved to tears, or moved to a thought, through a thought process, or given a calm feeling, or given an emotional rush. That's really the point of art, is to take somebody on a journey. You initiate a journey for somebody else's soul, which the artist starts on a journey which goes through into the artwork, and the artwork is exhibited, and that's where the artist leaves. The artist steps back at that point, and from then on it's up to the individual to find something that resonates in the piece, and then take it on their own journey, which is what you might describe as the customer journey. The customer journey starts, or the collector journey starts, with a look, and he can look at the client, or the viewer can look at 20 pieces of artwork, and only one of them speaks to them, and that one is the one that they go with, because it resonates in some bizarre spiritual way with them, and it goes on speaking into their life. I mean, I got an email last week from someone whose parents had recently passed away, and they'd inherited a painting of mine that they bought from my first one-man show in 1976, and they've had this as a treasured possession since the 1970s. And the daughter wrote to me asking the story behind it, and saying that she lived in Australia now and she didn't want to part with it. It was one of her treasured possessions. And so that's like super crazy, really, if you think that art has the power to sort of stick with a family or with a person for the whole of their life, that they had that painting on their wall literally all of their adult life, and still enjoyed it.
I'm looking at all the wonderful comments that are coming in, but I have to tell you, on a personal note, one of the hardest things about losing a loved one, as my mom passed away 3 months ago, is that occasionally what you want to do is just call them up and say, oh, you would have loved Simon Bull being on the show. You would have loved him in this episode. This is one of those times when I really miss her, because I wish I could share this moment with her, and maybe I am sharing it with her, or she's watching in a different way. But I just want you to know, this is like an acute moment where I almost feel selfish to keep you to myself. Not that, of course, I'm keeping you to myself because people are watching. Speaking of which, I love some of the comments. Teresa Miller said haters or viewers too, and potential buyers. I agree. And R. Gathright Bridgewater says, don't hate, appreciate. Amen to that. Shannon Ellis says, it's like having a video of giving birth and having a beautiful baby. I don't know if, I don't think either of us have given birth, but I think that point is taken, no doubt. So Simon, let's talk about this technique. First of all, I've got more videos to share. And if you want actually to treat yourself, please do me a favor. Do me a favor. Don't do Simon the favor. Do me the favor. And I want you to just go and immerse yourself. Be one of the 605,000 followers. I am one of them that just goes down and views these magnificent pieces of art. Simon, which is the most recent one? Is it this one?
That one right there. That one right there, yeah.
Yeah, let's see if this will actually work rather than load it. I'll actually play it for
you.
Okay, yeah,
that's cool. Yeah.
Let's see if that will load nicely. All right, so I want to go back to the technique, because the technique is absolutely fascinating. We've got one more video to share that really showcases the technique. So let's watch this, and then we'll talk about how I don't even know. I mean, it is performance art, but is there a name? Well, let's watch this first, and then I'll ask you. See, I feel a little dirty now in a weird sort of way, a very tingly sort of way. I love that. It must be the music. You just told me, is that you do share what that device that is?
Yeah, it's just let me hang on. Hold on. Let me show you. I've got a unused one here. It's a CD rack. So back in the day, you could get these at IKEA. So if you had a CD, you could just kind of put it in there. You know what I mean? And store your CDs. So I thought if I taped up one end, I could fill these channels with paint and start pouring. So the rest they say is history, you know.
I mean, as Shannon says, so satisfying, and indeed, it certainly is. Yeah, I also wondered, and one of the things that I loved the most was I loved the dots, and I never understood how the dots came in, and that's also the CD rack. But you have how do you create the dot effect versus the pouring? It's just beautiful.
Well, it's all about viscosity and gravity and all that kind of stupid stuff, But it's just you have to get the amount of paint in the channels to the right level and have the angle right, and you can just get these dots, But it's kind of what I like about it is that you're going along like this with it, and there's little vibrations, and it's like looking on a heart monitor or something because they all move like at the same time, and so you create this, like you were saying earlier on about proof of life. What's great is that's like a kind of biological printout of my state of my health or whatever at that moment. It's like I was moving or trembling in a certain way, and everything is like recorded. So that's another thing I like about gestural marks in art. It's like some people will do like a mark that's like maybe 6 inches round, but because they're small, but a bigger person will do like a bigger arc, so people will move in a different way. And so the gestural marks on the painting are actually a recording of your body as much as anything else. And so that is like kind of takes us back to the cave painters of long ago,
I'm telling I'm nourished right now. You might be the first 3-time air horn guest out of 450. I love this idea of biological printout, but really, Simon, what struck me is this beautiful marriage between art and science, because you're talking to me about viscosity and gravity, and yet we're talking about art in the most pure form, original performance art, not imitation. Beware cheap imitations. But it's a beautiful marriage between art and science. And by the way, I'm also appreciating my backgrounds, how Joseph Jaffe Is Not Famous is about as colorful as your background as well. I must be doing something right. So this idea of like art and science, I want to go back to there is an author by the name of Austin Kleon who wrote a book called Steal Like an Artist. I wonder how you react to this idea of stealing like an artist, because you're not an artist that has stolen from anyone. You're an artist that has created something from scratch.
Well, I think that there are no such thing as new ideas. There are only old ideas that can be seen in a new way. And I think my role as an artist is to show old things in new ways so that they can be freshly appreciated. And so the branch of the new branch that's about to grow out of the tree in your garden is new this year. It's fresh, but it's from the old tree, and maybe this year's crop will be better. And I think that's how I see my art. I don't, we all get ideas from what's current and what's in the world, but at the same time, for me, many years ago, it came to me, I wrestled with the realization that my specialty, as it were, or my job, or my kind of role, or what I was doing as an artist was not sort of, because I'd be dealing with this thing with galleries. I'd be supplying galleries, and I'd do, say, a certain look, and the galleries would be say like, yeah, give us more of that because it sells or whatever. But the thing is, it only sells because once upon a time it was new, and so I can't be going back and doing that. I have to be going on and doing something that's different and interesting to me. And so what I'm doing is I'm creating trends that will be popular in the future. I'm creating a look which nobody's ever seen yet, but one day will be familiar, you know. And so that's the unique and beautiful thing that an artist has the ability to do, is to decide ahead of time what he thinks society should consider fashionable in the future. And you just do it. And then one day, gradually, people wake up and they're thinking Simon Bull thoughts, you know, because I put the thoughts out there ahead of time and created the environment for them to start thinking Simon Bull thoughts. And, you know, so the artist kind of, in a way, sketches out how the future should look for society.
Listen, I was almost going to say that's a load of bull, but you know, it was just a dad joke as well. So let's go with this idea for a second I'm jotting it down I'm putting it into my own pottery wheel, my own machine, because this is going to be your coffee table book called Simon Bull Thoughts. No bull, just bull thoughts. I like this idea. You know, you got the art on the left and then these pithy statements on the right. I just, you know, I'm happy to endorse it if you like. I'm just joking. But Simon, in all seriousness, it sounds so easy, and you make it sound so easy. You know, the last person that I know that was able to do that was Steve Jobs. In the sense, look, and now I've compared you to Jackson Pollock and Steve Jobs. Checks in the mail. But you know, Steve spoke about bravery and courage. You know, and I remember even after his death, you know, when Tim Cook brought out the AirPods without the wires, this idea of creating things for people in the future. You're familiar, of course, with that Henry Ford attributed quote, "If I'd asked consumers what they wanted, I would have designed a faster horse." How do you have the confidence and the conviction to create something that doesn't exist and have that belief that people will eventually get to where you were?
Well, you have to be prepared to do stuff that most people think is stupid. So you get a stupid idea, like, you know, so one of my little quotes is that if an idea comes into your head and you think I should probably not do that, it's probably exactly what you should do. You know,
I love that. That's your next book, Stupid Ideas.
I think that I just, I don't know, just always been sort of like wired that way, I guess. I just, it's not something you don't walk into your studio and say, right, I'm going to make the future today. You just go down like a little avenue and you sort of like make a mark, you know, like, and then you look at it and think, well, it needs another mark next to it. And then you look at that, it needs another one next to it. And then you find that other people are gathering around and being swept along with you on your journey. And before you know what's happening, you know, you're in the middle of a movement, you know. But, you know, you can't be sort of appeasing the art dealers. You know, you need to just shock the art dealers, you know, do whatever the heck you want to do, but in a way that what I've learned is to bypass the art dealers and go direct to the public. This is why I love Instagram. You know, you can do something and you put it up on Instagram and immediately you'll know whether it's going to be successful or not. You know
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
And people that don't care will tell you, and that's important. You know, I liken it to a boat that if it's in a harbor, it doesn't get a lot of rocking, but it doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't really do anything. But the further that boat pushes away from the harbor, the deeper it goes into like the real ocean, the bigger the waves are, the more dangerous it is out there, but also more intentional, the more exciting, and more likely to get somewhere.
Simon the pirate, I guess. I love the analogy as well, and I think you have to also be, just even in your ability to connect with me, to respond to people, you have to be not just self-aware, but actually attune and connected to that journey, to your consumer's journey, your collector's journey. And of course, you nailed it, which is you can actually see your views as a proxy of what resonates and what doesn't. You don't even need to, for the most part, look at the comments. You can see when something has struck a chord or struck a nerve, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the thing, the worst thing that can happen is nobody says anything.
Well, exactly, and there's your apathy and your indifference. I found a quote for you. I always try and find a quote for my guests, and this is the one that I found for you. It's the good life is a process, not a state of being. It is a direction, not a destination. I kind of love this. This actually comes from Carl Rogers. And what I loved is that it introduced a new word into this conversation about, life is a journey, not a destination. Success is a journey, not a destination. It actually introduced two things: process, which of course you have, and direction in terms of where you're heading. And I kind of just love that because it just adds more color, context, depth, dimension, meaning to this idea of the collector journey.
Well, yeah, I've always been very process driven. For many years, I worked in watercolor, which is very process driven because you have to get a clear vision of the end result before you even start. Okay, because if you need to do a white flower, for example, in the middle of a green field, you've got to paint the green field and leave the white paper where the flower is, for example, or you have to layer it. I also spent many years as a printmaker working on copper plates, multiple plates, and so you have to take an image and you have to break it down across multiple plates, and you have to do all that kind of technical work on it. And so it has to be very kind of process driven. And so since the many years I've been working as a painter, I'm very strong on process, but it's kind of intuitive with me now. Like I just kind of, I don't think about it. It just sort of happens. And so there are a number of streams that come into my work that are not immediately kind of understandable or viewable by the average hater on Instagram. And one is that I spent my teenage years not playing football, but actually going to drawing class and learning to draw. So I could draw anything that you put in front of me, very quickly, very accurately, and very succinctly. It's not difficult for me. I can draw whatever I want, okay, from life, from a photo, from imagination. But the thing is, I don't use that in a visible way in a lot of my pouring techniques. It just, to the average person, it's just like I'm pouring paint. Like anybody can do that. But what they don't see is the fact that there's actually, my mind is actually directing those pours into a certain structure, which has been defined by a process and like a sense of compositional balance and sort of so on, that's kind of going in a certain direction to create a certain feeling. And when it's finished, boom, it's done, sort of thing. But you have to have an underlying discipline in your life that has caused you to get to this place of being able to kind of manage what appears at first to be chaos into a sense of order, which is managed so sort of well that you don't even know that you're not even aware that it's being managed. You just think it's chaos. But then when you step away from it and it's framed and it's on a gallery wall and it's got a $50,000 price tag on it, you look at it and think, of course, why isn't it 100,000?
I know. Well, just keep it at 50,000 while I can still afford it before it gets to 100,000. It's a beautiful way to end today's conversation, which I hope is the start of many and the birth of a beautiful friendship. Simon, I love again the contrast, the contradictions, but really the marriage, the harmony between what would be seemingly diametrically opposed forces. Process and intuition, intuitive process, as you said. You almost have these beautiful contradictions that come together to work really beautifully. The order and the chaos, the art and the science, the intuition and the process. And a key word which I hear again and again is discipline. And it's amazing how many creative people love and worship and respect discipline as part of their process and part of their art. And I see that so strongly with you. Shannon says, thanks so much for sharing. Very interesting, no doubt, as well. I've been meaning to ask my guests this final question, and then I always forget because we run out of time, as we typically do when we're having fun. But I started thinking about this idea of what I know now that I didn't know then. And you've taken us on your personal journey from once famous to famous again. And along the way, all of these beautiful Simon Bull thoughts, if you will, that inform you and create this magnificent coffee table book. But I'd love to know just a parting thought from you. What do you know now that you didn't know then? What is the Simon Bull today? What would he say to the Simon Bull of yesteryear?
That's a great question. I think what I would say, to my younger self is the fact that I would say, believe in yourself, have more self-confidence. Don't doubt yourself or hold back. God has a plan for your life. Go for it. And even though I have been very confident and very successful in many ways in my creative life, it took me 15 years as a professional artist. The first 15 years as a professional artist, it took me 15 years before I could really sit down and say, yes, I am an artist. I would see photos of Picasso in his studio and think, that's an artist. Whereas me, I'm just somebody that's like left art school and he's trying to make a living painting pictures. And so it's just suddenly, because, you don't graduate art college and somebody gives you a little badge and says artist. There has to come a moment within yourself when you can say, you know what, I am an artist. My world is one of being creative and shaping the way society thinks and looks and acts through the visual messages that I bring. Now, you don't sort of wake up as a kid and think like that. You're the guy that can draw, horses in school, You have to graduate yourself to that position. It can take a long time, sort of like people call it imposter syndrome or whatever, but to come to the place where you can embrace your calling and your purpose and understand that you have power within that I guess I'd say it to my former self, but at the same time I realized that it's part of the process. You're not going to give it to it. A 21-year-old is not going to think like this. But I think
that's so true.
People like Picasso, for example, are unusual because they did think it as a 21-year-old, because they'd been thinking it since they were 12. And I think that the younger that you can embrace that, the sooner you can make a more universal impact. So I've been blessed to have a long career in art. And I'm blessed the fact that I can finally, in these sort of I'm 65 now, in this kind of glorious phase of my life, where I can go into my studio and I can entertain 1 million people a day on Instagram. I've found a kind of, it's kind of all come full circle, and it's very cool.
I totally agree. I thought you were going to be a lot more succinct and just say you would have said to your younger former self, do stupid things. But you actually said something so amazing right there at the end is, we all talk about what we would have told our younger former selves, but would we have taken the advice? And the answer, that is rhetorical. The answer is no. All we have is right now. And I've thoroughly enjoyed these moments with you. And I can tell you someone else that has thoroughly enjoyed you as well is Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
and we will be back soon. Take care, Simon Bullitt. And we will be back very, very soon with someone that's slightly less famous than Simon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.